Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Ha'arakah, Kadash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of great moves, those who rule well, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. It's a prophecy and news video coming at you again, and this is dealing with some information about U.S. military army exercises. I was gonna go with this article, but I think I'm gonna stick with this one. Okay, so it's from Russia Today, RT. Right, the article is entitled "NATO's Defender Europe 20 exercises only increase chances of war with Russia, not diminish them." All right, and I just previously done a video dealing with the doomsday clock and different factors. This is another factor, all right, that gets thrown into the pot, but ultimately this is with this is dealing, because this is news and prophecy and news. This ain't about, I ain't one of those what you call it, conspiracy theorists, all right. Lord willing, you know, I'm a prophet of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, man, the hope of the hopeful elect, okay. And the reason I'm presenting this information is to basically forewarn you of things to come, all right. Filtering all these news articles or this news information through the Holy Scriptures, the Holy Bible, all right. So NATO's Defender Europe 20 exercises only increases chances of war with Russia, not diminish them. Okay, the upcoming U.S.-led Defender Europe 20 military exercises, ostensibly designed to promote peace through deterrence, only increase the prospects of a deadly war with Russia on European soil. All right, so they're hoping by doing this, by flexing bicep, basically, that they're gonna deter the enemy from doing anything, but it's having a different effect. All right, it's basically making them turn their pruning hooks into spears, basically, because they're looking at like, yo, a bit too close for my comfort, so let me prepare in case. Let me show no form of weakness, all right? The coming spring, the United States will deploy what it terms a combat-capable division-sized force from sites in the continental U.S. to forward operating bases in Europe, where they will participate in exercises designed to counter hypothetical Russian military aggression, all right? Some 20,000 American servicemen and women will team up with 9,000 of their comrades already stationed in Europe, with some 13,000 pieces of equipment at their disposal. Now, if I was Russia, that to me would send alarm bells ringing, because 20,000 ain't no light number, all right? 20,000 military servicemen heading over to Europe, basically, to undergo exercises, all right? Including tanks, armored fighting vehicles, and artillery pieces, and they're armed to the teeth at that. In the largest such efforts since the U.S. military stopped conducting a return of forces to Germany exercises at the end of the Cold War. All right, so this is the largest effort seen since the end of the Cold War, basically. Codenamed Defender Europe 20. This exercise represents a culmination of over 6 years of work by the U.S. military to rebuild offensive ground combat capability in Europe, all right? So the Lord has put the spirit on Esau to build up for the previous 6 years, to build up his military ground combat ground military capability in Europe for the past 6 years, to culminate in the year of prophecy 2020, all right, which was lost when the last U.S. heavy forces withdrew in 2013. So they stepped down in 2013, but now they come back, and they stepped down in 2013, but they've come back with a presence reminiscent of that during the time of the end of the Cold War, all right? Which ain't no, the Cold War was when it looked like World War III was about to go down. Doomsday clock was at its peak, all right? And it died down, all right? Because Russia basically fell from its grace, but now it's been brought back up for the culmination of what? World War III, all right? And the return of Yahweh Shai. Following Crimea's joining of Russia after a referendum in 2014 and an outbreak of separatist fighting in Russian-speaking portions of eastern Ukraine, the US-led NATO alliance has been struggling to assemble a conventional military force capable of deterring possible Russian aggression against the Baltics and Poland. For its part, US began rotating an armored brigade consisting of some 1,500 soldiers into Poland on a full-time basis, as well as deploying pre-positioned stocks of military vehicles and equipment for additional forces that would be flown in. Defender Europe 20 represents the first full-scale exercise of its complete force. So we got this. Again, let's remember this is we're talking about January right now. All right, 6 years to culminate for the turn of the decade into the 20s for America to bring forth a great military presence over into the land of Europe, right? Reminiscent of the Cold War, right? The turn of the decade, 2020. This is January. This ain't no 2025. This is January 2020, all right? Amongst a myriad of other things that are happening presently. Russia's response to NATO build-up. For its part, Russia has not been idle. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Russian army underwent a major reorganization, standing down the massive armored formations that had been preparing for war with NATO, and instead of focusing on smaller, more agile formations conducive to regional security, a major ground war in Europe no longer factored in Russian military thinking. This changed, however, once NATO began building up its forces in Poland and the Baltics. All right, so the Lord is basically working on it, working prophecy, man. All right, Russia reactivated the 1st Guards Tank Army and the 20th Guards combined arms army, creating a powerful offensive mechanism designed to defeat any aggressive NATO move into Western Russia. Russian military forces in the enclave of Kaliningrad were likewise bolstered. Okay, following the demise of the INF Treaty in August of last year, a great deal of attention has been paid to the potential resumption of a nuclear arms race in Europe. As a result, consideration of developments in the conventional warfare capabilities tended to be suppressed in the mainstream media. But the fact is, the enhancement of NATO's conventional military response to Russia's aggression. Sorry, let me read this again. Okay. Following the demise of the INF Treaty in August of last year, a great deal of attention has been paid to the potential resumption of new nuclear arms race in Europe. As a result, alright, let's look up with this INF Treaty. I'm guessing it was where they agreed that they wouldn't be building no more nuclear artillery. The INF Treaty banned all of the two nations' land-based ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and missile launchers with ranges of 500 to 1,000 kilometers, short medium range 1,000 to 500 kilometers, immediate range. The treaty did not apply to air and sea launched missiles. Right, so that was signed in 1987. That looks like Ronald Reagan, but I'm not aware of the other, the Soviet Union leader. All right, but basically that treaty had ended. Okay, of short, medium range, and intermediate range. Okay, so reading again, following the demise of the INF Treaty in August of last year, a great deal of attention has been paid to the potential resumption of new nuclear arms race in Europe. All right, because they had an agreement to basically not have short, medium, or intermediate range missiles. Now that's been disannulled. It's been done away with. Now the assumption would be, okay, be a new, since there's no agreement no more. I've got to be prepared to defend myself because they might take advantage of the gap of no treaty being held. Okay. Um, as a result, consideration of developments in conventional warfare capabilities tended to be suppressed in the mainstream media. But the fact is, the enhancement of NATO's conventional military response to Russian aggression, whether real or perceived, in Eastern Europe and the Baltics through major exercises such as Defender Europe 20, will inevitably lead to a larger Russian counter-response, resulting in an even greater build-up in conventional warfighting capability. And all of these things are worked with this in mind, okay? Because remember, the thing with Crimea really was an inside job, man. They said they had agent provocateurs and whatnot around that basically and Russia took a very over approach in annexing, reclaiming Crimea, which they said they had given to Ukraine, if my memory serves me correct. Okay, so all of these things kind of can be thrown into the culmination of this to make America look like we're just helping out our fellow European brethren, but that's not really the case. This is because they had this in mind, right? And that's why now they're doing a big exercise over there, and the artillery, I'm sure, that will be included will be short, medium range missiles as well as intermediate range missiles. So they got all distances covered, all right? So there will be no winners, only losers. Europe has not witnessed a major ground war on this soil since the end of the Second World War in 1945. And when the Cold War ended in 1991, many experts believed that such a conflict was unimaginable in modern times. This thinking continued to this day as the issue of nuclear rearmament looms large. The greatest threat to Europe, however, doesn't come from nuclear weapons. The consequences of any nuclear conflict serve to make their use unimaginable. All right. So they can't even imagine what it would look like if the war broke out now with and I'm guessing it's through the advancements of technology, how crazy it can get, cyber warfare and all these different things. The same does not hold true for the conventional military capabilities. The ease with which the US and NATO project conventional military power toward Russia, and with which Russia prepares a conventional military counter-response, underscores a reality that conventional military force, unlike nuclear weapons, is relatively easy to deploy. The ugly truth of the matter is that the likelihood of the conventional military power being unleashed as a result of a crisis in Eastern Europe or the Baltics is very high. Okay? So there's a great chance that the warfare could play out in Europe, on the mainland Europe, and in the Baltics, right? The speed and lethality of modern weaponry means that any conventional conflict between NATO and Russia will be conducted with a level of sustained violence, wow, the likes of which the world has not witnessed in over 75 years. So going back to 75 years, I'm guessing, is around, we're dealing with 1945, I'm guessing Second World War, alright? But really be more reminiscent of World War One, because in World War One, they basically had great advancements in technology, but because they didn't know that the impact of the injury that those weapons could do, they didn't have medical capability to defend with to deal with the injuries that was made on the soldiers. So a lot of people a lot of psychological, shell shock and these different kind of things took hold on the people, the soldiers. A lot of injuries that could have been dealt with better, basically grew worse because they didn't have the capabilities to deal with them. And that was called the Great War, the war to end the wars, right? And that's the same thing with this war. This war is going to be with weapons that are just unimaginable, okay? You know, that's what they're going to bring to deter, in hopes of deterring a nuclear firefight, which is basically mutual. I forgot the actual mutually assured destruction. I believe it is. Let me just check that. Yeah, mutually assured destruction. Okay, so let's go back. All right. The casualties that will be inflicted on both sides are beyond the imagination of populations unfamiliar with the reality of modern war, as is the collateral damage to civilians caught in the middle. In short, the consequences of a conventional ground war in Europe will be massive amounts of death and destruction delivered across a broad swathe of territory in a very short time period. Yep, yep. The US and NATO can talk all they want about how exercises such as Defender Europe 20 make Europe more stable and secure by giving teeth to the concept of a European deterrence to any potential Russian aggression. But there can be no deference in both if both sides are prepared to act in response to the actions of the other. The fact is, Defender Europe 20 is but the latest in a series of aggressive moves by NATO dating back to the expansion of the alliance into the territories of former Warsaw Pact countries. Okay, dating back to the expansion of the alliance into the territories of former Warsaw Pact countries following the collapse of the Soviet Union, which have generated casual responses that make war with Russia more likely than not. If a war does break, it said a war with Russia is more likely than not. So if we're talking about percentages, it's over 50% as opposed to we're more likely to have a war. It's way more likely. What am I talking about? Esau, all right, NATO and the EU are more likely to have a war with Russia than they are not to, all right. If a war does break out, it will be the task of the historians to apportion responsibility. But one thing is for certain, there will be no winners, only losers, right? Mutually assured destruction. So, okay, bear with me. Where am I going with this? It's lucky, bear with me. Let's grab a scripture. Oh, that's it. So this is Joel. Okay, it's Joel 3:9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Alright? Actually, you know what? That's not what. Yeah, my brain is luckier. You know what? I'm drawing blanks right now. Um, Okay. Okay. So it's in Matthew 12 and 25. Yahushua knew their faults and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. All right. So, as I said at the end of the article, okay, only the underlying factor is this with the whole article. But one thing is for certain: there will be no winners, only losers. Why? Because the two people that are standing off against each other is really technically America and Russia. Now, according to the Bible, what's their nationality? That is a question of great emphasis, because their nationality is in fact they are Red Hebrew Edomites. Yeah. So them being Red Hebrew Edomites, Esau Edom, all right, as they like to name themselves in the latter days, the so-called white man, all right, them being of the same nation, the reason why they bear rulership is because why? It's because of the blessing that Esau gave them. But this is like two two children of Esau that basically are combating one another, all right, for rulership, all right, to have dominion over the kingdom, okay, and two men can't sit on one throne. So let's read this again. So it's Matthew 12:25. And Yahushua knew their faults and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, all right, destroyed, all right, and this kingdom as it stands is divided against itself, all right, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? It can't stand. And if I be but that's the point, all right. How shall it stand? It's not gonna stand. So with these things you're seeing, this is the culmination of World War III, right? Due to the INF treaty being put away, it's opened up an expansion in the turn of the decade, the start of the year of prophecy, as Apostle Tahar has named it through the spirit of Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shai Ba'Shem HaRakah Kadash. This is set a new precedent where